All right, well, I'm here with Jeff Hoyt from Zeolite Labs, and also he is the Zeolite coach. So, we're going to talk a lot about Zeolite. We're going to talk a lot about its unique binding properties. Many of you guys have heard of toxin binders. Zeolite is one of those, and it's very unique in the way that it works. And so, we're going to go through that. Jeff, great to have you here. And let's start with the impact of heavy metals and toxins on our body, and in particular on our brain health.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's unfortunately in this day and age, we are going to be exposed to a number of toxic elements. Most recognized are going to be the heavy metals because there's a lot of research. There's a lot of industrial chemicals. There's just a lot of these external stressors that are coming at us on a daily basis. And the challenge is our bodies have to deal with this excess load of toxicity. And there's a certain capacity, kind of a stress threshold of what we can handle. And when we exceed that threshold, that's when we start developing problems, because at that point, the body isn't able to handle the toxic elements coming in and it has to start tucking them into storage. And then we can have an accumulation of toxic metals in organs and in tissues such as the brain, and it can start impacting brain health and other organ function throughout the body. In addition, just focusing on the brain here, it's not necessarily the toxic elements in the brain that are causing all the problems, although they are causing problems, but just having free-floating toxicity from your daily dose. So from the food, water, air, just these heavy metals and toxins coming in, they're resulting in strong inflammatory immune responses, which result in inflammatory reactions, and that can impact brain health as well. Because when we have inflammation, that can result in a number of symptoms. And there's a lot of toxic elements coming in that can impact brain health. One of them, which I think is overlooked, is actually an internally produced toxin, which is ammonia, right? Because we put a lot of focus on keeping the bad out, but a lot of times the toxicity that is hurting us on a daily basis is produced from within our own bodies, such things like metabolic waste products like the ammonia, urea, excess histamine, free radicals, and these things. And addressing those can be incredibly helpful because they're all pulling on our body's detox energy and making our body work harder than normal to stay balanced. So an ammonia, for example, which is a metabolic waste product that is produced after, through protein digestion. It's also produced if you have excess microbial issues. So things like candida will produce ammonia. So a lot of people end up with a little excess ammonia. And if our livers aren't working optimally, we have a difficult time breaking that down into the product urea, and then ammonia can build up. That can travel to the bloodstream. That can actually go to the brain and directly cause a number of issues like brain fog and other issues affecting the brain. So toxicity is an issue. There's heavy metals, there's environmental toxins, there's plastics, there's metabolic waste products, there's mycotoxins. There's just a lot of stuff coming at us on a daily basis.
Yeah, you mentioned ammonia. I always think of H. pylori, which is a really common bacteria that can get in and cause an infection in the stomach, and it releases ammonia as well. And also, when we're thinking about endotoxins in general, we got to think about lipopolysaccharides, LPS, which when that gets in the bloodstream, that can be a really potent inflammatory trigger that can really cause disruption in the brain as well. So that's big. And then all these toxins are going to impact mitochondrial health, right? And when mitochondrial health get impacted, that's going to drive up inflammation. And the brain is the most dense area. The neurons are the most dense area of mitochondria. And this is why when we have a high toxic load, some of the most common symptoms are going to be brain-related symptoms.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're talking about things like anxiety, trouble remembering, forgetfulness, obviously just any sort of cognitive dysfunction, mood disorders, all of that kind of stuff. These are some of the most common symptoms that people experience when their toxic load or their total body burden of toxins starts to build up.
Yeah, and it's a snowball effect, really, because once you have an overload of a certain toxin and that's pulling on your body's energy and it reduces the body's ability to handle these stressors, and then you can start developing additional toxic stressors. So when you have that opportunity with the heavy metals that are coming in, the opportunity arises for, like you mentioned, H. pylori and some other pathogenic microbes to start multiplying, and then they're producing the waste products, like you mentioned, like ammonia, lipopolysaccharides, and then it just continues adding to our daily dose of toxicity, and it makes it more difficult for our bodies to keep up, and then the more symptomatic we become.
Yeah, for sure. So, first step, obviously, we got to reduce the amount of toxins we're being exposed to. So clean air, water, food. And that's all really, really important. But we also need really good detoxification practices, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, first step, reduce. It's preventing the bad from coming in and helping whatever's already inside to get out, right? And kind of the formula for success is if your body's natural detox functions, just your detox energy, is able to handle all the toxicity coming in on a daily basis, that's the formula for success, right? A lot of people in this day and age are not there, so they're just whatever they're exposed to, their body just can't handle it. So they're getting symptoms every single day. And then furthermore, they might actually be getting accumulation of some of those toxic elements. And then it just gets worse and worse over time. So yes, we want to reduce the exposure, but then we want to get out what's already inside. And I think one of the most overlooked aspects of an effective detox protocol is addressing the internally produced toxicity, like I mentioned with ammonia and metabolic waste products, and also some of the microbial load. And then also preventing the recycled toxicity, because we often poison ourselves every single day with our own toxicity that we've accumulated over the years. So a lot of people say, well, I'm eating all organic. I'm just have this super clean lifestyle. Why do I still feel terrible? Why do I have these toxicity symptoms? And it may not be what you've done now or the last few years. Maybe it was what you did 15, 20 years ago, and your body is still working with the toxicity that was stored even when you were a child. So as an example, your liver is a filter. Your liver stores toxicity, heavy metals and other things. And if your liver is toxic, you produce toxic bile. So your liver produces bile to help digest fat and do other things. And it carries toxins from the liver into the small intestine. And the body naturally recycles about 95% of its bile, so it reuses it. But the problem is if your liver's toxic, you're recycling this toxicity along with the bile. So you have bile produced in the liver, goes to the small intestine, and then it goes through the portal-vein enterohepatic recirculation, and it recirculates, and you're recycling toxicity, and that can make you feel terrible every single day. So some people, after they eat or after they exercise, after they go in a sauna, after they do something to stimulate bile, feel terrible because they've released extra bile, which in turn releases extra toxicity. Now the body, that toxicity was basically deactive. Now it's put into the body's processing center. So now it's active toxicity. It can cause symptoms. So one of the keys to an effective detox, in my opinion, is to prevent that recycling from occurring by binding that toxicity in the small intestine so it can't recirculate and keep poisoning you every single day.
Yeah, and that's really where toxin binders come in. So I always say we have to pee and poop our way to good health. Of course, we breathe out a lot of toxins as well. We also sweat out toxins, particularly if we're exercising regularly, getting good sun exposure and getting in the sauna, all really important things.
Yeah.
And we got to poop well. That's one way that we move toxic bile out of the system. But like you were saying, we're not going to be able to move all of it out that way unless we need toxin binders to help get a higher percentage of the toxins that are in the bile and in the gut out of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about, because people ask, what detox product should I take and how long should I take it and all this. It's all individualized, right? There's no one perfect product for everyone. There's no exact protocol that's going to fit every single person because each person is so unique. And really the healthier you become, the less support you need. The more toxic you are, the more support you need at that time. And as you peel off layers of toxicity and you start addressing underlying sources of dysfunction in the body, then you shouldn't have to supplement as much because your body's natural capacity is going to be greater. So what's so great about binders in the 21st century is that we do have all of these daily dose toxins coming at us, and it's overburdening our system, and it's just coming in and supporting detox. So it's not fighting against the body's natural detox process like potentially some other things could be. It's literally just going in, binding whatever is currently in the body's natural processing center, the metabolic waste products, the metals, the mycotoxins, whatever it may be, and that kind of calms the storm in the body. It just frees up some energy, and then the body can use that additional energy to do other things. Maybe it's repair. Maybe it's going after some of the deeper level toxicity that it put into storage because it wasn't able to deal with it at the time. So it's binding, it's working with the body's natural process, and it's just calming things down so the body can kind of breathe.
Yeah, for sure. And there's many different types of binders. There's things like chlorella, which is a binder, charcoal, activated charcoal. There's bentonite clay, diatomaceous earth, fulvic, humic acids, and citrus pectin. Fiber in general can be a binder. But what is unique about zeolite? I know you specialize with zeolite. What's unique about that?
Yeah, and there's a lot of great binders out there, and I think some people respond better to certain binders. So it's really about finding the binder that's going to work best for you and in your situation. And there's challenges with some binders and there's advantages to each binder as well. One of the challenges with a lot of binders is constipation, a potential nutrient depletion, where they're kind of indiscriminate binders. They're going in and grabbing everything. Zeolite powder, specifically Zeocharge, tends to not come with a lot of the issues associated with more traditional binders. So one, it works through a swap mechanism. So instead of just going in and just grabbing everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which can be helpful short term, it works through swapping. So it's got this cage-like structure, and naturally it has potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, these electrolytes in its cage. When it comes across an element that's heavier, such as a heavy metal, it swaps the mineral that it has for the heavier or more toxic element, and then it leaves the essential nutrients alone. So it can be taken at even high doses without causing nutrient depletion in most cases, because it's not directly grabbing the essential nutrients, it's swapping what it has, which is essential nutrients for more toxic elements, opposed to things like potentially charcoal and some of the clays that are more indiscriminate, and they're just grabbing onto everything, which long term they might need to be pulsed on and off and just can't be taken. They're also more likely to cause constipation and other things. So a little bit different. One of the other things that sets Zeocharge apart is the cage. So opposed to just attaching things to the surface, like a lot of other binders through adsorption, the zeolite has this cage structure where it can safely trap the toxic elements in the cage, and then it's a much more efficient detox, so it's less likely to drop the toxins after they've been bound and cause any sort of redistribution. And then the last thing would be just the surface area. So with the advanced manufacturing process of zeolites that we're utilizing, at least, you can get incredible surface area. So there's much more binding. Think of that in terms of binding capacity. There's just much more binding capacity available with the micronized zeolite powders opposed to some of the other binders. So it's just a much more efficient, you're just binding more stuff essentially.
Yeah, so it's got that cage-like structure. So a lot of binders kind of grab, but then they can release. And so they can, in a sense, move the toxin, but not fully get it out of the system, whereas the cage-like structure really binds and holds and pulls it all the way out. Now, where do we find zeolite? We can find in nature, right? Like it's a natural compound that's produced in nature.
Yeah, I like to say it's a solution from nature supercharged by science, right? So God gave it to us, and then we just enhanced it through advanced manufacturing practices. So it's a mineral of volcanic origin, and it's got this strong negative charge, and then it's attracted to the positively charged elements, which happen to mostly be the toxic elements, and that works through that swap mechanism. So it's got this negative charge, and then it swaps for the positively charged. But yeah, it's found in nature.
Attract.
Yep.
In chemistry.
Yep. But it is natural, and that is one important thing to consider, is that zeolite is a broad term. It's a class of mineral, and there's a lot of different naturally occurring types of zeolite. We don't want to just go and try any of them, because a lot of them probably would not be safe. So Clinoptilolite is the form of zeolite that has been shown to be safe for human consumption. So that's what we use, and that's what most companies are using in their supplements, because that's the one. It's got a different structure. It's safer. It's completely different. It's got a higher silica-to-aluminum ratio, which determines its stability. Lots of factors. That's what we're talking about here, kind of a Clinoptilolite natural purified zeolite powder. And then there's also synthetic zeolites, which are a completely different operation, because those are man-made, and those are going to be they're basically synthetic chelators. They're completely different, and there's nanos, there's liquid, there's a lot of stuff going on. But when I talk about the benefits of zeolite, I'm talking about purified Clinoptilolite zeolite powder, like Zeocharge.
Yeah, and where are the best ways? Like, where are the best places to get it? Where do you source that?
So it can be. There's a number of sources. So the place you don't want to get it, and you're talking about the mine location.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the place you don't want to get it is the United States. Right. So, and I know it sounds weird. Yeah. I mean, you don't want it from China either, but the United States, you don't want it because zeolite is used for a lot of commercial and industrial purposes. So there's a lot of very cheap zeolite available because it's been used in industry for many years. So the mines in the United States and in China are commercial mines, right? So they're not designed for human consumption. So some companies are utilizing their mines. They're just taking the zeolite, but it doesn't have the quality assurance practices where like we're getting it from a private mine, right? So it's going to be a completely different process, and it's designed specifically for human use, opposed to just grabbing it and potentially, have extreme mycotoxin contamination all sorts of stuff. Where there's a lot of issues with a lot of zeolite mines, but ours doesn't undergo that. So there's different mines. There's different types of clinoptilolite too. There's different quality of clinoptilolite. So like ours is a 94% clinoptilolite, whereas some of the products are 70%, and then there's other materials like quartz and things in there. So you want to get a high percentage clinoptilolite. Then you want to get one with the high silica to aluminum ratio. So ours is about 75.5% silica by content, which is incredibly high, because when you have a higher silica to aluminum ratio, it results in a more stable structure. And that's one of the concerns with zeolite. It's an aluminosilicate. So it's made of
aluminum in it.
Right, and alumina, which first of all, it's alumina, which is aluminum oxide, which is the naturally occurring aluminum. So it's not the metallic, synthetic, man-made aluminum that's conductive that we're most concerned with issues. That's going to be found in the synthetic zeolites. So we generally I would advise against those. But the naturally occurring zeolites have alumina. We still don't want it to break it. We don't want it to break apart though. Even though it's considered a ceramic material, not a metal, we don't want it to break apart from the structure. That's one of the reasons clinoptilolite is used in zeolite, because it's been shown to be stable through stomach acid. So it goes through, it's not a bioavailable nutrient, it's not working on any specific pathway, it's just going in, staying intact, grabbing things, and then leaving the body. And so silica to aluminum ratio kind of determines the structure. So zeocharge is incredibly stable, it doesn't break down in stomach acid. No risk of aluminum toxicity, any of that stuff. We've proven all that through case studies prior to launching, and some other stuff. So that's one of the main considerations.
So basically, you want like a 70% or better silica to alumina ratio.
It's so like it's like a 6.3 to 1, essentially, like the silica to aluminum.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be that high. I'm not saying that ones that are a little lower aren't stable. It's just that ours is potentially a little bit more stable, and they're all stable. That's like clinoptilolite in general has been shown to be stable. It's just that ours has a little bit higher ratio, so it's just a little bit extra peace of mind, just in case people are concerned. Plus, we've got the case studies and the proof showing that not only does it not cause aluminum toxicity, but it has a very strong aluminum detoxing effect, even at the tissue level. So we've kind of gone through some of that, because prior to launching the company a number of years ago, we weren't, we saw the research, we saw that it wasn't supposed to cause aluminum toxicity, but we weren't for sure. So we did a case studies program prior to launch to see, and we were able to show that, yeah, it absolutely does not cause aluminum toxicity, and it has a strong aluminum detoxing effect.
Yeah, because there is concerns in the natural health world. People have blogged about, potential issues with zeolite use. But of course, there's many people out there that have gotten amazing results using zeolite, particularly as it's become more popular, really over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, and there is reason to be concerned with certain products, so that it's kind of justified, because what has happened is we've kind of grouped zeolite together is this one product, but you've got liquids, you've got powders, you've got nanos, you've got synthetics, and they all act completely differently. So the synthetics there's research showing that synthetic zeolite does accumulate in tissue, the aluminum. So you want to stay away from those completely. Some of these supplements, these dietary supplements, the nanos, are actually, if you look on the label, they're synthetic, or they're marketed as lab grown or something, which is synthetic. Yeah. It's different. That's going to have the metallic aluminum, which is completely different, right? So that's a little bit different. Then you've got things like nanozeolites, which they're broken down to the point where we don't know if they're stable anymore, because when you're in the nano range, and some of them are marketed as clinoptilolite fragments and these other things, where you've broken down this cage. You no longer have a cage, you just have little pieces of the zeolite cage, which can still be helpful, because zeolite not only traps things in its cage, but it can absorb things to its surface, like the other binders. So it can still have detox effects, but it's not ideal, because now you have these fragments, and we really don't have research on those to show if those are a good idea or not. So once again, don't recommend those, and it's the research is on the powders.
Yeah, for sure. So what should somebody look for? You mentioned a lot of different things. They shouldn't look for nanozeolite. What exactly should they look for when they're vetting out different zeolite products?
Yeah, so just the purified, is it cleaned? Is there some sort of proof that it works? Is going to be one, right? So, and most companies cannot provide that to you. They just say this is a great product, type of thing. So some sort of proof. Like, we have a full case studies page on our website. We've got a whole podcast, the Detox Experience, dedicated to people sharing their experiences. we're coming out with some additional research as well, like live blood analysis and these type of things, just showing the improvement in blood health. So that's one. And then, third-party testing, of course, can be helpful to, make sure it's okay, looking at the silica-to-aluminum ratio, all these things. But basically start with the powder and then make sure it's a powder that's designed for human consumption and not industry. And then the texture as well. So if you bought, 3 different types of zeolite on Amazon, and then you compared it to Zeocharge, you would be able to tell, one, just from looking at it probably, and then from feeling it and then tasting it, you could tell the difference, because a lot of them are going to be feel like you got a mouthful of sand at the beach and you can't get the stuff out of your teeth. If that's the case, it's too large of a particle size. You don't want the particles that large because it's a decrease in binding capacity, a decrease in surface area. It's not going to be as effective. You don't want it too small where you're in this super nano range where we don't really know what it's doing and it's breaking down the structures. You want to kind of have it in this intermediate range, which is where we're at, which is like 0.5 micron, which is 500 nanometers, to up to 8 micron. So it's kind of the range. A lot of the powders are 100 micron, and you would need hundreds of times the amount to get the binding capacity of Zeocharge.
So 0.5 to 8 microns, kind of the appropriate size.
Yeah, now, anywhere in there.
Yep. Now, what toxins does zeolite have the most effective binding capacity to?
Yeah, the nice thing about it is so broad spectrum. So it binds to a lot of different things. I mean, just in industry, before it was used for humans, it was used for cleaning up nuclear waste out of the environment, binding to cesium, strontium-137, just very effectively, like even in Chernobyl, just dumping it onto water supplies, just cleaning stuff up. So it binds to radioactive waste. It was used in animals before humans to bind to mycotoxins, aflatoxins, ochratoxin A in the animal feed. So it binds to those. So in humans, I mean, we're binding to a lot of the mycotoxins, heavy metals, of course. It's binding to a number of the heavy metals, the environmental toxins. It's been shown to bind to glyphosate as well, and water. And a lot of the research on zeolite for specific binding capacity is water, because it's been used for water filtration. So glyphosate, it's been shown to bind to BPA. So it's been shown to bind to a lot of different things. I think one of the strongest things it binds to is ammonia. And I think that's one of the things why people say, why is Zeocharge so much more effective than my other binders? And I think one of the reasons is the enhanced surface area, the ability to tolerate it at higher doses, and then the ammonia binding capacity, along with some of the other metabolic waste products as well. But in general, I think some people just need higher doses. Like, to get a therapeutic dose of a binder, a lot of people cannot get it with a lot of binders because of the other issues associated with those binders, like constipation and nutrient depletion. So with zeolite, the same thing is true. Some people, when they take too low of a dose, they're not going to get the benefits. They need a higher dose. So you have to find a product where you're able to get a high enough dose to get the therapeutic value. And that, I think, holds true for a lot of binders. It's just not doable with some binders.
Yeah, and I know you talk about something called I think it's the zeolite paradox, right?
Yep, the dosing paradox.
Yeah, the dosing paradox. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so and this is one of the most important things and most understood things about about zeolite is a lot of people want to start slow and work up, which is understandable. That's what everyone's been trained to do, right? Titrate low to high, test the waters, see how you're feeling on it, and then if it goes well, go up. With Zeocharge and zeolite powders, that's actually the opposite of what you want to do, because lowered microdoses are essentially much more likely to result in the negative detox reactions than higher doses. So we're talking about irritability, headaches, joint pain. If you take, for example, if you mix a scoop of Zeocharge in a glass of water and you take one sip, you're much more likely to get a headache than if you would have taken the entire glass. And we did a sip challenge to demonstrate this as well a couple years ago. So it's because when you take a small amount, it's a very powerful mineral, Clinoptilolite, zeolite. So even a small amount can go in and kind of stir things up, disrupt biofilms, it kind of makes a mess in the body. It starts the detox process through binding, but then there's not enough binding capacity to finish the job. Now the body has to use its resources to clean up the mess that was made. So that's essentially the opposite of what your goal was with the binder, which is to reduce stress. If you take a microdose, you're actually adding stress to the system. Now, in the same scenario, let's say you took the full glass of Zeocharge. Now you go in, you stir stuff up, you still make a mess, but there's extra zeolite. There's extra binding capacity there to clean up its own mess. And the net effect is a reduction in stress on the body. All right, so that's always the question. What's the net effect after you take it? Is it adding stress? Is it reducing stress? The microdoses are much more likely to add stress than the therapeutic or potential, the optimal doses, which is higher doses. And it tricks people because when people take microdoses, and this is what's seen in liquid zeolites, which essentially have, 1, 2, 3 milligrams of zeolite, they're microdoses. Zeocharge has 5,000 milligrams per scoop. The nanos have less than 1 milligram. So they're microdoses, and people often get these terrible reactions, and they say, this is a great sign. It means the product is working, and it's doing something, in fairness, absolutely. But if you can detox without the reaction, that's much better. It's actually, you're detoxing faster and more efficiently. So with Zeocharge, if you take one sip and you get a reaction, and then you take a full glass and you don't get a reaction, the reaction didn't mean the product was working better. It means it was a less efficient detox. It added stress to your system. Your body had to do more of the work, where the higher dose, the Zeocharge was doing more of the work, and it was more efficient and effective.
So you find that using the higher dose is more effective for most people. Now, even very sensitive people, how do you kind of start somebody out?
Especially for more sensitive people, because the more circulating, I call it level 1 toxicity, which is kind of whatever's toxicity is in your body's processing center, the daily dose, external plus internal production. The more of that you have, the more of the zeolite powder you want to take, because the goal is to bind to as much of that as possible. And then, because as things get stirred up in detox, because it's not just the heavy metals we're talking about, when you take a binder, it disrupts biofilms. Now you have microbes floating around, and then there's an immune response, and then that can cause some detox stress. So what you want to do is to bind as much stuff as possible, so that any additional detox stress that occurs from the binding process, your body still has energy to handle it, opposed to just going in and removing 1% of the toxicity, and then you add 10% more toxicity through biofilm disruption. Right, so you want to bind as much as possible. So kind of the formula for success is you want to grab everything floating around and then have a little bit extra zeolite even there. So when the detox stress occurs, there's still binding capacity to help support you.
So your recommendation would be you get it in a powder form because you're getting more of it, as opposed to the liquid form, or like a form maybe in a capsule. Powder form, put it in water. And you recommend 1 scoop a day. Is that typically where you start? Or 1 scoop twice a day? What's the typical?
So I always recommend starting with 1 dose per day instead of split doses, because the key is to get enough on each dose, not throughout the day, right? Yeah. So, and if you're taking 1 scoop and
saturate the system at once.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're taking 1 scoop and it's stressful on your system, and you do that twice a day, you're stressing out your system twice. So you want a little recovery time. Plus 2 scoops is less likely to cause the reaction than 1 scoop. So I recommend with Zeocharge for sensitive individuals between 2 and 6 scoops. Okay. I know it's a wide range, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. Between 2 and 6 scoops once per day, and then you can adjust the dose as needed. So let's say you start with 2 scoops, or let's say you even start with 1 scoop, and then you experience a headache, which is one of the number 1 signs of a detox reaction or detox stress. The next day, try to double your dose. If you started with 1 scoop, go to 2 scoops. If you started with 2 scoops, go to 4 scoops. And then see if the reaction is better. If it's better, that means, okay, great, now you have enough binding capacity. There's a few caveats, like if you start with 6 scoops and then you go to 8 scoops and the detox reaction gets worse, it might be because you're expelling more microbes, like parasites. So there's like a 10% chance where you get more of a reaction on a higher dose when you get up to the super higher doses. But that's just because of microbial release, and the immune system's kind of dealing with a little bit extra. But in general, I like 2 scoops. 2 scoops, really good starting point. If you get a reaction, double it to 4 scoops and see how that goes. That works really well for a lot of people.
And all in one sitting, basically, like in a 15-minute period of time or something.
Yeah, just drink all at once, ideally. It can be taken anytime. The other nice thing about zeolite is it can be taken with food. It doesn't have to be taken on an empty stomach like a lot of the other binders. Like in animal research, it's always mixed with the animal feed, and it still improves the nutrient levels in the blood in the animals in the research. So it can be taken after a meal to help bind some of that toxic bile, to prevent the recirculation of it. It can be taken on an empty stomach. If you're someone that's very concerned with getting reactions, and maybe you've been deemed too sick to detox, right? And for you, it's probably best to start taking it after a meal, not first thing in the morning. If you take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, you're much more likely to experience the reactions. One, because it has a stronger antimicrobial effect in general. If you take it after a meal, you're going to be binding to more of the metabolic waste products and things. It's very helpful, but less likely to cause that reaction, at least starting off.
Yeah, that's good to know. Now, does heat affect it? Like if you were to put it in with warm water, hot water, will that impact it?
Nope, that's another nice thing. Very versatile. It can be, you can bake it. So we're just started coming out with a few recipes. You can bake it into baked goods. You can put it into, some people mix it with their coffee, hot tea, hot cocoa. It's not heat sensitive up to, like thousands of degrees Fahrenheit. So nothing with like a standard oven or anything would destroy the structure, because it is
Good
a
to know.
volcanic
So you
mineral.
can mix it in things. You can put it in your coffee. What I've been doing since you sent me some is I just put it in water, hot water. I like, it's wintertime out here where I'm at the time that we're communicating. It's wintertime, and so I always like some sort of like warm herbal tea at night, and also in the morning when I wake up. I usually give myself like 90 minutes before I drink coffee, and so I've been doing binders in warm water, right? Maybe with some herbal tea in the evening, and then also in the morning. So I started using your Zeolite with that.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people do that first thing, and it's all the healthier you are, the more liberty you have for detox and for just taking things as you wish. The more sensitive you are and the more challenges you have with detox, that's when you have to start honing in on what is the most optimal, that's going to stress out my body the least. But
So
for
you
the
would
average
recommend
person,
somebody that's very sensitive, best place to start would be take it with a meal
I would take 2 scoops after dinner.
after dinner. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, great recommendation there. All right, well, great. And, obviously you guys are seeing great results with this. People can check out zeolitelabs.com and also your coaching site, the zeolitecoach.com. What are they going to find there?
So the most of the information's on zeolitelabs.com.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing personal coaching right now. So the Zeolite Coach is really more of an educational platform with mostly the same information. That one does have a link to a lot of the podcasts I've been on, and then also a link to our podcast, which is the detoxexperience.com. And that's where we just, users share their experience as well. But zeolitelabs.com, lots of resources, lots of educational videos, dosing guides, what is zeolite, how to use it. Case studies program is on there. Lots of information on some of my theories on like the 3 levels of detox. And so the zeolitelabs.com, and then the education page specifically is going to be the best place to start, because there's a getting started video. Start there, 5 minutes, and then work your way down and watch as many of the videos as you care to watch.
It's great. Well, I'm a huge advocate of using binders. Zeolite is certainly a great one, and Jeff has got a really good product, the supercharged Zeolite, that you can find again at zeolitelabs.com, and you can learn all about detox and all his different philosophies with that and the dosing strategies. Check out zeolitelabs.com. They have an education page, and and check out his supercharged Zeolite as well. Jeff, thanks so much again for your time. Any last words of inspiration here for our audience?
And thanks for having me. I think this was a lot of fun. This was great. I had fun. It's great.
Yeah.
I think it's just a lot of people that I talk to are very frustrated because, they've been at this game a long time, and they think they're doing everything right, or they think they're doing everything right and they're not getting the right results. But one of the formulas for success is doing the right thing plus time. So sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. Sometimes it's patient. But the other thing is just detox is a process. It's not a 3-month program. It's really it's a lifestyle, and it just takes longer than some people would like. So just be patient with it. And there's ebbs and flows, because the body goes through natural cycles of detox. So a lot of people try to identify, what is it that I did differently this week that made me feel so terrible? It may have been nothing that you did. It might have been an external factor like the weather even, or the moon. It might have been an internal factor like your body started dumping some mercury from the brain, and now your body's actively processing it, and it caused a little bit of a reaction. So there's ebbs and flows to detox when you're taking something like ZeoCharge or any detox protocol that you're on. So just be patient with it and understand that there's going to be cycles. But as long as you're removing these toxic elements from the body, it's a positive effect, and eventually you're going to start getting closer to your health goals.
Yeah, it's a great encouraging word. Absolutely. It's certainly a process, and for many people it can be an uphill climb, right? Yeah. But if you continue on these processes and you're using the right products and the right strategies, you're going to get to the top of that hill. So Jeff, thanks again so much for your time. Guys, again, check out zeolitelabs.com, and we'll see you all on a future podcast. Be blessed, everybody.